Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай Defacto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор бүгд найрамдах энтэг улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа онц бөгөөд бүрэн ихэд элчин сайд ноён MP Singh оролцож байна.
Мохиндр Пратап Singh бүгд найрамдах энтэг улсын Монгол улсад суугаа онц бөгөөд бүрэн ихэд элчин сайд. Ноён Мохиндр Пратап Singh 1985 онд энтгийн гадаад хэргийн яамд орсноос хойш гадаад хэргийн албандаа хамгийн олон жил ёслолын хэлтэст ажилласан цөөн тооны хүмүүсийн нэг. Тэрээр одоо ашиглагдаж байгаа энтэг улсын төрийн болон засгийн газрын айлчлалын ёслолын удирдамжийг боловсруулахад болон шинчилэхэд чухал үүрэг гүйцэтгэсэн юм. Тэрээр Бангкок дахь энтгийн элчин сайдын яамд захиргааны атташе, Торонтод энтгийн консулын газарт олон нийтийн харилцааны дарга, Дубай дахь энтгийн консулын газарт олон нийтийн харилцааны дарга, Лондонд энтгийн дээд комист тусгай төсөл ёслолын газрын даргаар тус ажиллаж байсан. Энтэг улсаас Монгол улсад суух элчин сайдаар томилогдохоос өмнө тэрээр Нью Дели хотод гадаад хэргийн яамны хурал зөвлөгөөн хариуцсан захирлаар ажиллаж байсан бөгөөд тэрээр Праваси Бхаратия Кендрагийн үйл ажиллагааны хорооны даргаар мөн ажиллаж байжээ.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for receiving me here with you today.
With great pleasure, Ambassador. Let's talk about the current situation in between two countries, in particular in the light of a recent visit of Mongolian president to India. And also recently we had other officials related to the projects we are working on. Please, let's have a bigger picture. How do you see the relations between two countries today?
Well, I must begin with, to begin with today, we must go back in the history. We must go back in time. With Mongolia, I think there are ancient scriptures and documents that prove the first connectivity between India and Mongolia happened more than 2 centuries ago. That was during the emergence of Buddhism from India into the Mongolian steppes, coming all the way from Himalayas down through the Silk Route. And of course there was a checkered history, and the relationship which is brought through the vehicle of Buddhism got reinforced, strengthened in the recent times with the Mongolian monks studying in India and Nalanda recently, where your president had gone and personally seen. It was one of the first universities of the world ever, which had international students, including there is an anecdotal and references that Mongolian monks studied in Mongolia. So yeah, that was the time that our relationship originated or connected through Buddhism. In the recent times, I would say, after India became independent and Mongolia became a democratic nation, the relationship has been on the ascendance. There's a great momentum, especially the momentum brought in by the visit of Prime Minister Modi into Mongolia in 2015 was a watershed movement. It brought in a paradigm shift into our relationship. India has an Act East policy now, and Mongolia in that is a very important friend and a strategic partner of India. And if you were to see the last few years, the momentum of relationship has actually enhanced and enlarged into the areas of cooperation, and relationship has flourished, nourished and nurtured into areas much beyond the regular political scenario. We are attempting to bring in more economic and trade content into our relationship. We have an enormous goodwill in Mongolia, all Indians and Indians in Mongolia, and likewise Mongolia has huge goodwill in India. So our idea is to get the trade and commercial content into our relationship commensurate with the enormous goodwill that exists between our two countries.
Indeed, we are working on that, in particular after Prime Minister Modi's visit. And then now let's talk about the project we started with, $1 billion credit line. I mean, it's a special discounted credit line. And I understood recently that even they have increased this amount of credit line. What was the reason of extension?
See, let me just, for your viewers' benefit, that during the visit of Prime Minister Modi, there was a 1 billion line of credit was announced for Mongolia. It's a specially announced package, highly concessional line of credit for developing infrastructure. And somewhere down the line, about 2 years ago, Mongolian government decided to use it for putting up the first oil refinery in Mongolia. And that refinery, which is likely to come up in Dornogovi province, is capable of producing 1.5 million metric tons. And the refinery has a certain related infrastructure works, which is the responsibility of Mongolian government. Perhaps recently you would have seen the reports that your president, your prime minister, our petroleum minister had gone and inspected that. And during the recent visit of President to India, there was a request that came from Mongolia for additional funding. When the initial feasibility study was done about a year ago, and it has gone over a period of time, and given the terrain and challenges that exist for putting up of a refinery, the envisaged cost of 1 billion has now gone up to 1.236, which is now, for India, it is the single largest project of assistance anywhere in the world except neighborhood. And if we add into this the element of infrastructure related works, which will be another $400 to $500 million, this would make it perhaps, to my knowledge, the second largest project in Mongolia outside of OT. So this is the importance. And why refinery? Perhaps this would usher in an energy independence and ensure energy security for the Mongolian, because the refinery would be capable of producing close to about 80 to 85% of Mongolia's needs. So I think dependence of import would get substantially reduced once the refinery is up and about.
However, there was a concern. I don't know whether it is subject of your concern or knowledge, that refinery is far away, about 650 kilometers or 700 from the where the people, the China is developing, producing oil. How you on your side are considering that bottleneck? Will they bring by trucks or pipelines?
Well, this is something, let me just tell you, you rightly said that the refinery is coming up in Dornogovi, whereas the two oil fields are located in Dornod, about 550 kilometers away. Till recently, the government of Mongolia had decided on a mode of transportation for the refinery as pipeline. And apparently it's a very conscious decision, a sovereign decision, that where the Mongolian government would want to put the refinery. So it was a decision, something that was taken by the Mongolian government, and we very well support that. We have had a detailed feasibility study done by the experts. Separately, the Mongolian government also had the feasibilities done through independent experts, which are foreign other than Indian. And I think essentially it was decided that the crude will be brought from Dornod to the refinery site by the means which are being decided yet. One was the pipeline, which that building a 550 kilometer pipeline, and another which recently came up was the overground transportation. And now that includes rail and road. So perhaps on this, the Indian, during the recent visit of the president, the two sides agreed that there will be a detailed feasibility study carried out, and keeping in view both the costs and the feasibility and the functionality part of the refinery. So yeah, this is where we stand, and given the timelines that we have put for refinery, as of now, we still maintain that it will be up and about in about 2023 or so.
By expectation is by 2023, in 2-3 years, Mongolia, 4 years, Mongolia will have a first refined oil. Well,
we call it God willing, and certainly, as I mentioned, this would be the second strategic important project for Mongolia outside Oyo Tolgoi, and it impacts every single aspect of economic activity in Mongolia. So we are genuinely hopeful that both the Indian and Mongolian side would sit together and work together to get this refinery project completed in time as per the feasibilities.
Ambassador, let's talk about the other aspect of our cooperation, which is in diplomatic field. You have one of the best foreign services, also because it was so close with the UK and your colonial past, then very successful continuation of afterwards. And I had an interview with your public service head a few years ago, and I was very stunned that public service recruitment afterwards, the preparations, training was so scrupulous, details, very nice. Tell us about that system, please.
Well, I think it is so timely that you brought up this project, or rather this discussion about the civil services. We call it as the steel frame of India, the Indian bureaucracy, or the Indian Civil Services Commission. It is responsible for not only recruiting, training, but drafting a module of a selection process in such a way that only the best of best come through. And why I said it is so opportune that just about 2 months ago, the Mongolian Civil Services Council signed an MOU with the Union Public Service Commission of India towards how do we associate and collaborate with each other to develop and support the Mongolian civil services. And your chairman of the Civil Services Council recently went to India and have had fruitful discussions, and they have agreed on a plan of action that includes, taking cues from a proven system that India has evolved over a period of time, which gives us a very strong and very, helpful bureaucracy that understands the nuances of developmental challenges and also keeping in view the public aspirations.
Very on-time action, I think.
So I think it's so good that it happened, and we are looking at the first action happening anytime sooner, which is the early of 2020. So that makes us very helpful. There'll be, since you mentioned it, separately than this, India has a very strong capacity building program. And we, the Indian government, through Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, offers about 200 seats. And in addition, there are 50 more scholarships offered to the Mongolians under the ICCR. And separately than this, there are space cooperation, there is defense cooperation. So in all, about 300 odd scholarships are offered every year to Mongolians. And I'm glad to share with you that during last 3 decades or so, more than 3,500 Mongolians have benefited from these trainings. And these
3,500.
3,500.
Wow.
And if I were to give you the recent groups that have gone, the last year we have had people from NEMA trained with the Indian Disaster Management Authority. We have had the custom inspector gone to India. From here, 20 of them, 30 English teachers had gone. This year we are planning to send a group of 20 governors to India in about 2 months' time. And of course there's a group of diplomats that is going to India to train under the Foreign Service Institutes. So what I'm saying is that these are some of the ways and means with which we have been able to strengthen our relationship and also support the Mongolian government to have capacity building in human talent and human capital, which is so crucial and vital for fulfilling the economic aspirations and development of this country.
Yeah, this is something Mongolia the most needed, because I think one of the bottlenecks of the development in the country is very much frequently replacing public services, which makes economic and political institutions weaker. You cannot prepare a person every third year. Meanwhile, your country is from the very start of career, you go all the way through. And by the way, when and how you have decided to be ambassador, the foreign diplomat, and what was the procedure you have gone through?
Thank you. And yes, I agree with you. The continuity is something that must be maintained to sustain the momentum of development and policy of the government, so that the results match with the aspirations. As for me, I joined the Foreign Service about 3 decades ago. I entered through what you had just referred as the Union Public Service Commission, and they have a very rigorous...
30 years ago?
Yeah, about 30 years ago. And I have gone through various processes of selection. Our process of selection involves the initial, I would say, vetting of the applications, by which you give a preliminary exam. And then after you qualify that, you come into the mainstream. For example, I can tell you, that point in time, perhaps more than 4 million people would have applied for 40 odd jobs that we were selected.
4 million people for 40 jobs?
Something like that.
Oh my goodness,
and
okay.
Then comes the process of selection and interview and training.
Okay.
Now, training is so integral to development of human resource, and especially for me. You asked for me, and I said I had never ever thought of any other career other than foreign service, for the simple reason that it allows you not only to travel, but to understand diverse cultures, their nuances, meet people. For me, travel is an education. Whatever we have read through the books was one, but whatever comes through travel and interacting with the people, visiting them, meeting them,
travel is education.
It enhances your knowledge and sphere of understanding.
Who are your parents? What's your background?
My my father...
From where?
Yes, of course. My father was again working for the Indian government. He worked in the railways, in the Northern Railways as engineer. And my mother initially worked in one of the Indian telephone companies before taking sabbatical and looking after the kids. So yes, both of them have ingrained in us the importance of education as to...
How many siblings?
I have 3 sisters, and all of them are wonderfully settled. One is in Finland, and another one is married to an Indian Air Force officer, and the third one is a teacher.
Okay, you are the oldest one or
I'm
youngest?
the eldest one.
Oldest one.
Yeah.
Which part of India you were born or come from?
I was born in North India. I was born in New Delhi, which is the capital city, and when my father moved...
Which city?
New Delhi.
New Delhi,
is the capital city.
You were born in New Delhi?
I was born in New Delhi. And then my parents moved to in a neighboring province called Uttar Pradesh, in Lucknow,
large
and
province,
where he was working, and he worked there for a few years before reverting back. So when I was 6-7 years old, we reverted back to Delhi, and I stayed there forever, and even now I stay in Delhi.
Because through your personal career, I want to describe how you are selected. It's very serious selections. As you said, 4 million people are running for only 40 jobs, and on one side, how competitive is this job, right? On the other side, it is once you have gone through the selections, you have very serious training program. So in terms of foreign service, and what kind of training program and how often you go through when it comes to improve to upgrade your career?
You see, the government of India, I think, has followed a very systematic training program, which is not only in the initial stages. The initial stages, you go through a program which is run by the Foreign Service Institute and also during attachment with the various government bodies, so that you don't only learn about the nuances of the foreign policy, but whole working of the government of India. Since people have opted for the foreign service, they must mandatorily learn a language. So I was assigned Spanish language, which I learned, and of course I can proudly say that it is my language that I speak, I write, and I can follow. I also was able to get some training in Vietnam way back in 1990s, as I said. And I have a basic knowledge of Vietnamese also. Insofar as the other training is concerned, after this training you are inducted and you are posted to a foreign mission, or rather of Indian embassy in a foreign country, where you get the practical aspects of knowledge. That's first posting gives you, you are working as trainee, and then when you come back, before you get elevated to the promotions, you have to undergo a career training program. We call it the first midterm career training program. And once you have done about 10 or 12 years in that, there is a second career training program, which I have just done in Boston before coming here, and I am in Ahmedabad. And after that, once you reach the pinnacle of your career, there is a refresher course. So at all stages of your life, I would say in 30 years I have done at least 3, but I would love it.
Why you would do it in Boston?
Because, you know, the Indian government not only allows you to know what is in India, but once you have reached a threshold of your career, that you are representing a country and a nation and articulating a point of view, then I was sent to the Fletcher School of Diplomacy, along with the group, of course. And we have had an extensive training of 15 days where you learn about the new concepts, or I would say newer ideas that emanate, where all of the teachers are foreign teachers, and the modules are designed in such a way that these are India-centric, so that you get an international point of view and training. And not only that, we also do a month training in the Foreign Service and in Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, and also the newer areas, which is artificial intelligence, cybersecurity.
Wow.
That is also included in the program once you reach the
How
threshold.
often in your Foreign Service people who is not from diplomatic service are being nominated to ambassadorship or anywhere else? I understand there can be only to ambassadorship, nothing else.
That's right. That's right. It's only very recently that we have had very few. I can tell you that we have about 190 embassies and consulates abroad.
190.
190. And of which there'll be less than 5 non-carrier ambassadors. These are for a special reason, because they are experts, and sometimes it's for a political reason. For example, if I recall correctly, for about 10 years, we have had Reverend Rinpoche Kushak Bakula as ambassador
In Mongolia, yes.
And the amount of contribution that Reverend Kushak Bakula Rinpoche has made to our two relations is phenomenal, is enormous. Yes. So we have less than about 5 non-carrier diplomats are posted.
Out of 190 ambassadors, you only less than 5 non-carrier diplomats.
Correct. I would say 190 ambassadors and consul generals.
Consul generals.
It's all included here.
Yeah. By the way, there is, except diplomats, there are also people coming, technical workers coming.
Very true.
How do you deal with them? How do you recruit them?
It's not a recruitment process that they get recruited into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They are seconded on deputation. For example, we have a developmental assistance program which is more than $2 billion a year, and which spans into different projects of cooperation. It is not only infrastructure, railway, IT, cyber, media, building dams, roads, defense cooperation. So what the government of India has decided that laterally from the line ministries or people who are expert in their fields are seconded on deputation to the Ministry of External Affairs for a period of 2 to 5 years. And they are the experts in their own field. So they help us evolve. And the special areas, I can tell you, are the infrastructure development partnership, defense, counterterrorism,
So
IT,
those
cybersecurity.
employees working in embassies could be seconded from other line
They
ministries.
are on deputation.
Okay.
And deputation for a purpose.
Oh.
And generally it goes up to 5 to 6 years. And as low as 2 years to 5 years. So yes, they help us evolve up a point of view which is knowledgeable, and it helps us make an informed decision.
Ambassador, why you? I know it's national cloth, etc. Please tell us about that.
Well, this is the question I've been asked often, so I
Okay, so you are all right.
amazed. You
Okay.
see, what I wear is called turban. I belong to a religion called Sikh religion, and the Sikh religion believes in no form of God except the word of God. And there are more than 200 million plus followers of the Sikh faith in about 60 odd countries, the largest concentration being in India, in US, Canada, Germany,
Yes.
UK.
I'm meeting
Yeah.
all around.
Yeah. So this is the piece of cloth. We don't cut our hair, the body hair. We leave it as a natural form. And so when I cover my hair, I would say we keep it in a presentable form. So this turban is like how do I say?
Turban.
We call it Indians call it. Crown of the Sikhs.
Okay.
But turban is not only unique to the Sikhs, it is also very common amongst non-Sikh. So this is what they signify. Color doesn't signify anything. Since I like red color, I wear it.
So you never cut your hair
I never cut
from very childhood.
from the childhood till now.
And it's the only way to keep them in
Yeah.
order. Otherwise, it should be very long.
You see, once you don't cut, they don't grow. I can tell you,
is
if they were to grow at the same speed as the normal hair,
Yes.
cut hair, I would have had a very flourishing hair.
I
But
see.
luckily, I think nature has its process.
Okay.
So yes, so that's to keep my.
Interesting.
And of course, it gives me an identity when you wear this turban and stand out in 10,000 people just by.
It's
yourself.
clear, it's Sikh.
Thank
Most Sikhs live in India,
Yes,
otherwise all around. So let's back very shortly to other issues that I need to ask you. Current situation in Kashmir. India declared that they have, I understood, take off the autonomous status. Why?
It's not, you see, the developmental aspirations of the state of Jammu and Kashmir were hindered by a clause which was temporary and only meant to be there for a while. And that clause was 370 in the Constitution. And what was happening is that while the rest of the country and all other states were progressing quite effectively, the advantages of development was not flowing down because of
this,
certain
region.
provisions. And this is a purely internal, I would say, revaluation where the government of India decided to take away a very, very temporary provision inserted several years ago, only to provide the developmental needs of the state of Jammu and Kashmir at par with the rest of India. So while the rest of India was progressing enormously, the benefits of development are not flowing down.
What was the key factor that stopping them?
No, some of the legislations at the center, for example, some of the schemes that were followed in the center, for example, the equality of women or empowerment was not going down fully to the people who mattered. So I think this was an aberration which was set right by the present government so that all citizens of India, including Jammu and Kashmir, can enjoy the benefits of progress which the rest of the country is making.
And then why some people are refusing?
I don't know anybody is refusing, but
Well, the area is divided into certain of interest, not agree Pakistan, China.
no, Kashmir is an integral part of India. If you were to follow the history, the then ruler of Kashmir decided on his own that it will integrate with India. So some of the Kashmir still remains with Pakistan, and which is the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The whole of Kashmir is an integral and inalienable part of India through the act of accession done by the king or of Kashmir then. And henceforth, the only matter is how do we get the other Kashmir also integrated with India.
So there is a part of China as well.
No, the part of Kashmir is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and which is part of India, which is something which is to be discussed or debated.
What was the result of very late meeting of summit of Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping?
As you would have seen that India has a huge border with China. This was the second informal summit that happened in Chennai. The first summit happened in China. The idea was to get to understand each other much more. We have a strategic partnership and relationship with China. Our trade is $100 billion already. So you can imagine that there would be, there are some, I would say, nagging issues of border that are still on, and otherwise the momentum that has in between India and China has progressed so well with this summit, the recent summit, and there'll be a special task force headed by the finance minister of India, and on the Chinese side also I think it's a deputy premier who will be heading to see how best we resolve. Currently the balance of trade is in favor of China, and effort is how do we work together with China and India to see that we could have a better balance of trade and understanding of each other.
Is there any positive toward that direction?
Oh, if you have read the statements issued by the Chinese government and Indian government, and I think this was a very positive, forward-looking summit that has taken place, and I can inform you that the Prime Minister Modi has accepted the invitation of President of China to visit China next year for the third informal summit.
Final last questions. You are now not anymore observer, but a member of Shanghai Organization of Cooperation.
That's very true.
How
India
do you
is
find
a
it?
member. Well, I think it's a platform which more than half the humanity on the earth is represented.
However, there is a certain statement on your side. You don't want to see Belt and Road initiative to be a part of it.
Well, if it infringes, some of the issues infringes the sovereignty of India. And to that extent...
Isn't it any there that touches the sovereignty of India?
No, you see, if you allow, for example, as I mentioned about the Kashmir, one of the
main road
passes through the Indian, I would say, which is Kashmir, which is occupied by Pakistan. Certainly, so it brings in the question of sovereignty of India. And India, like Mongolia, like any other country, has the sovereign right to decide about what happens on its
But the road is okay.
If it is a road required, then India should build it. It's not the part of, we are...
See, that's just I want to make clear. Ambassador, it was such an interesting, intense conversation. So glad that you have updated all these issues and willingly to answer all my questions. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Thank you,
I
sir.
certainly look forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
to be here.
За эрхэм хүндэтгэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай Defacto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноо бүгд найрамдах энтхэг улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа. Онц бөгөөд бүрэн эрхэд элчин сайд ноён MP Singh оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.